You've already gotten the steroid shot concerning dealing with the atheist. Now we're going to build some muscle. Get ready for atheism part 2. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Atheism part 2. Let's start with this question. Is seeing believing? Many times the atheist will say, what can you show me that proves that God exists? So it's as if like the burden is on me to show him. Well, how would that be possible anyways? I can show you, but it's not going to involve physically seeing, it's going to involve mental seeing. Because I don't have to believe in something just through looking at it. I can use other senses and I can use so many other systems and methodologies to believe in the existence of something. But the atheist confines it to just seeing. So first of all, don't accept this premise, because if you do, you're going to lose. You can't physically show them anything. So when someone says, can you show me something to prove that God exists? I'll tell them yes. And it's going to involve mental seeing and not actual physical seeing. First of all, seeing something with your own eyes doesn't necessarily entail that you're going to believe in it. I'll give you a simple example. Optical illusions. We've all seen these optical illusions in black and white where the line looks like it's curved, but you know it's straight. So with your eyes, you see a curved line. And if I asked you, is this line straight or curved? What's your answer? It's straight. Why did you say straight? You saw that it's curved because you know, using this logic, and logic is stronger than this. Logic takes precedence. You see it curved, but logic tells you it's straight, it's just an optical illusion, so your answer is what's here. So that means mental seeing is not only stronger than physical seeing, but many times if it goes against physical seeing, it takes precedence over it, and you allow it to take precedence. That's why when someone goes to an illusionist show or something like that, and you see them float or do something out of the ordinary, you immediately start to think strings, this, that, because in your mind you think there has to be a logical explanation. So through this we can actually believe in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The atheist, he puts himself in a weak position by making an absolute statement. To say there is no proof to the existence of God, there's no evidence to the existence of God, is an absolute statement, and it puts him in a weaker position. Because in order to make an absolute statement, you have to have 100% knowledge of something. Let's take an example. Suppose I say, there is no gold in China. This is an absolute statement. In order for me to truthfully say there's no gold in China, that entails that I must have gone and dug through every spot of land in China, look through every drawer in China, and those are a lot of drawers in China, to make this statement. So how can you make a statement if you don't have this full knowledge? So to say that there's no evidence to the existence of God, that means you have examined all the evidence. You know, whenever someone says this to me, my first question is, have you ever read the Quran? And he says no. Okay, then how do you make an absolute statement? The strongest evidence to the existence of Allah is the Quran. You haven't even looked through that, and yet you're willing to say, I looked through all the evidence and there's no existence of God. So you've already put yourself at a weak spot, we say, to the atheist. But what about the tough questions that the atheist asks that perhaps you may not be able to answer? Well, for one, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists doesn't mean that I have to be able to answer every single thing about the universe and things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't have to know every single thing to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. And there are some questions where you will have to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam, but that meaning Allah knows best. But that doesn't mean you don't have any basis for your belief in Allah azza wa jal. Now let's take some examples. So the atheist might ask you, who created God? And one thing we have to understand before we even answer this question, and that is that I can understand something and I may not necessarily be able to imagine it or wrap my mind around it, but I still understand it very well. I'll give you an excellent example. I love this example because I made it up. That's mostly why. So Imagine now you walk into paradise, Al-Jannah, and you see amazing things and all kinds of scents and odors, but you see a brand new color. And I mean a new category of color. Not a mixture of blue and azure and ultraviolet and violet and purple. Not a mixture of any existing worldly color. You see a completely brand new color. Do you understand what I'm saying? It makes sense. It's easy to understand. Now, close your eyes and imagine that color. You see the difference between understanding something? You understood what I was saying, but you could not imagine it and you could not wrap your mind around it. So it doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because you can't wrap your mind around it. Now, let's go back to our question. The atheist will ask you, who created God? And here's a simple answer. That question is disqualified. You're not allowed to ask that question, and you can't ask that question. And I know what the atheist is thinking right now. Oh, that's a cop-out. That's how you escape answering this tough question. You can't ask me that question. Why can't I ask you this question? It's very simple. Watch this logic. And you claim to be logical, Mr. Atheist. Let's see. So now we have the creator and the creation. And just philosophically, they can't be the same thing. They have to be different. Because if the creator is like the creation, that means he would have to be temporal, just like they are. He would have an end, just like they have an end. So he has to be different. And if they're different, we can't ask the same questions about the two because they're different. Still not convinced? Listen to this. We have the carpenter. And in this example, the carpenter, he is our creator. And in Arabic, you can actually say that the carpenter khalaqa baban, that he fashioned, but we use the same word as created a door. It means fashioned a door. So our creator now is the carpenter. The creation is the door. So this man, the carpenter, he created a door. Now, we are arguing that you cannot ask the same question about the creator as you can about the creation. And we don't liken Allah to his creation. We're not comparing Allah to the carpenter and the door here. But we're saying, look, if in the worldly example this is not acceptable, then what would make you think that it's acceptable to make this comparison between us and Allah? Let's look at the example. The creator is our carpenter. He's a human. And the door is made out of wood. So the door was made out of 6 planks of wood. And now I'm going to ask the same question about the creation as I am about the creator. So I'm going to ask, how many planks of wood was the carpenter made of? You see how silly that is? And you say, no, you can't ask that question. It doesn't make sense. Okay, here's another question. The door has 3 hinges. How many hinges are in the carpenter? You cannot ask the same question about the creation as you can about the creator. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical here. Okay, the carpenter has 3 children. How many children does the door have? You cannot ask the same question about the creator as you can about the creation. In this worldly example, it didn't make sense to ask these 2 questions. Why would it make sense to ask these 2 questions or these questions about Allah Azza wa Jal as it relates to his creation? So that's why. Okay, here's another question. How do we understand God? Unfortunately, because of our limited minds, the way we understand God is that we look to our world. Whenever we hear a description of Allah or an attribute, we look to our world, we find that attribute, we understand it, we magnify it and multiply it many times over, and we say that's how God is the same way. Meaning, I understand that Allah is Al-Rahim, the most merciful. So how can I understand that? It's simple. I've seen mercy. I've seen mercy in the animal kingdom. I've seen mercy between a woman and her child. So I understand this concept. I magnify it multiple times and I see how Allah is Al-Rahim, the most merciful. I'm told that Allah is Al-Karim, the most generous. I look to our world, and in this world I've seen generosity from people and I magnify that multiple times. Now I understand how Allah is the most merciful. So every time you describe Allah, I look to our world, I find that attribute, I magnify it, I understand Allah. Then you tell me that Allah has no beginning. So how do I understand God typically? I look to the world, find something and multiply it. I turn now to the world to find something that had no beginning. And what happens? I don't find it. So because I refer everything to my world, now that I don't find the same attribute, I'm thinking, okay, I'm stuck now. See, it's problematic. The way we understand God is itself problematic. So then you tell me, Everything has a beginning. How can God not have a beginning? No, everything in your world has a beginning. These laws don't apply to Allah Azza wa Jal. And you're making a wrong comparison. Now, how about this then? Sometimes we can find things in this dunya, in this world, that make sense, and we can use that as well to explain. You tell me Allah was the first. Okay, I can show you something in this world that was the first. So you say, today, Brother Ali was the first one in the room. And then you ask me, but who was there before him? What do you mean? I just told you, Brother Ali was the first one in the room. Yeah, but who was in the room before him? No, today he was the first one in the room. Yeah, but who was there before him? Perhaps you don't understand what first means. If you understand what first means, you wouldn't ask me that silly question. So even sometimes in our world, we can explain certain things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All this lends to the argument that you have the upper hand, you're in the stronger position, and you are the one who is going to educate the atheist, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. And it's not an uphill battle because he already believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deep down inside. جزاكم الله خير for attentive listening. صلى الله وبارك على محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.